Most people believe that they are their thoughts. What I think about myself is what I am, is true. And because it's what I think. Same reason I believe that my opinions are true, my judgments are true. Why? Because I believe them. But it's useful to, I've talked about this many times, but it's useful to remember that at the very beginning of our life, for the first year or so of our life, we hadn't yet learned words. We were alive, you look at an infant and they're very much alive, very much present, in noticing everything that's going on around them, very attentive, but they don't have any words for it. They haven't learned the words yet. So not knowing the words, not only can't you speak the words, but you can't think the words if you don't know them. And that is what thinking is. So for the first year or so of our life, we lived in this state of grace where we're just present for whatever was happening, curious, interested, engaged, but not reducing our experience to mental constructs, not reducing our experience to conceptual labeling of our experience. But we soon learned to do that. Our parents were very eager to teach us words. And so, even very simple words like mama, the word never would replace that sort of lush, warm presence in our life. But, we learned the word, and our parents seemed to like that, so we learned more words. And it wasn't long before basically everything that we were experiencing, we would do this interior narrative describing how we felt about it, describing it, labeling it, explaining it, justifying it, and basically reducing our life experience to conceptual narrative. So as adults, we find that when we actually sit down to watch the functioning of the mind closely, as in meditation, we find and may be shocked to find this constant stream of mental activity, on and on and on. No gap to be seen. Very, very linear. It may be chaotic, but it's one thought after another thought. Almost like sitting at a railroad crossing, watching an endless freight train go by. So that can be shocking when we meditate, especially if we believe that the goal of meditation is to, think spiritual thoughts, for example, or more challenging, think no thoughts at all. And what we find is, to our dismay, this constant stream. And we can wonder, where are all those thoughts coming from? We were taught that, the brain thinks them. But we can't really say that for sure, because in this spiritual journey, it actually doesn't do any good to take anybody else's word for, anything. It may be helpful to hear someone say something in terms of a pointer or a useful direction to explore, but you have to do the hard work yourself. So this idea that, the brain thinks, yes, that's what they taught us in school, and that's what nearly everyone assumes, but that's not our direct experience. We can't know that for sure, and in fact, scientists don't know that for sure either. What we can know for sure is what we can observe directly ourselves, which is that one thought arises, has a certain duration, and then at some point falls away, in almost always in favor of another thought, on and on. So this is really a very useful thing to discover in meditation. We can usually discover that the first time we sit down, that thoughts have that tendency to go on and on. So I'm not talking about, useful, linear, constructive, directive, focused thinking like you get paid to do at work. I'm talking about the other 90% of the time when we don't really have anything better for the mind to do, and so it sort of runs on its own momentum, remembering things, regretting things, hoping things, planning things, developing opinions, reviewing the day's events, all of those things that aren't actually happening other than in our own mind at the time. So that's the mind activity that we're talking about here. So over the even during the course of this lifetime, but also as a species over the millennia, humans have developed this ability to sort of step out of themselves and turn around and look back at themselves as self-reflection. Sort of looking back at ourselves and asking ourselves, how am I doing now? Am I doing it right? Am I making progress? Am I a good person? Am I worthy? Am I getting there? Those kind of questions. And it has some evolutionary value. It got us a long way as a species, but it also can be the tendency or the capacity to cause us a great deal of suffering. So this is the kind of self-talk that we're talking about here. So the question is, where did these thoughts actually arise from? And if we're asking what we truly know, rather than what we've just heard about, what we truly know is that they arise, hang around for a while, and then depart at some point. So we can't really say where they come from. We could even, wonder, without demanding an answer, whether there even are thoughts or not, or whether they're just arising. Right? And it doesn't do any good to say, well, they probably come from the subconscious, because that's just another way of saying, well, we don't really know. So what we can do is, if we just stick with what we do know, is that they arise. So the question becomes then, if they just arise without your willfulness, they arise on their own. So this is another thing that we can learn very quickly in meditation, is that we can't control what thoughts arise. Sometimes thoughts arise that, we don't really want to think about. If we could control our thoughts, we could think the thoughts we want to think about. We could not think the thoughts we don't want to think about. And we could stop thinking altogether anytime we wanted. But we can't do that. So that's another very instructive thing that we can learn from meditation. The goal of meditation is really not to get really good at meditating. It's really not. It's really to have a opportunity to take a front row seat and watch the gymnastics of our mind. See how it really works. And it's very useful to see that the thoughts that pass through our head are not under our control. Again, I know you can do that at work when you're thinking about a particular thing, but when we're just when the mind doesn't have anything better to do, it just rambles. So if it just rambles and we can't control it, and most of the thoughts are just come out of the thoroughly conditioned past, are you responsible for your thoughts? So that's a yes or no question. It's not a maybe question. It's either you are or you're not. If you're responsible for your thoughts, or think you are, you have to be responsible for all of them. You can't just say, well, I'm responsible for the good ones, and then I don't know, the devil is responsible for all those other ones. No, it's either you are or you're not. So it's useful to actually see that since we can't control the thoughts that do arise. And the thoughts that do arise are coming out of the thoroughly conditioned past, which happened in a very happenstance manner, right? The family you grew up in, and the religion and culture and nation and race and, set of friends and first grade teacher and all of that created a certain conditioning, a certain worldview, a certain personal view of how we take ourselves to be. So that conditioned behavior, conditioned way of thinking, is also, we're not really responsible for that because we didn't take on that condition consciously. It happened when we were growing up. We didn't even know it was happening. So if we can see just the nature of thought and our inability to control what thoughts do arise, it's very useful, because then we can stop trying to do that. If we still think we can do it, we just need to meditate more or try harder or, I don't know, fix our karma first. Then we have a lifetime project on our hands. And you're welcome to go down that road if you please. But the other alternative is just to see the very conditioned nature of that and notice that there is something that is aware of that thinking. And there's something that is aware of thoughts. And what's aware of thoughts is already free, is already at peace. And so we're not doing this to remove ourselves, to distance ourselves from our direct experience, but what the purpose that it serves is that it frees us from taking all of that material so personally. By recognizing that what we truly are is already free of that conglomeration of thoughts about ourselves and other people in the world, allows us to remain present when challenges arise in that whole arena, right? Because we can remain present with the challenges, knowing that what we truly are is actually already free of that. If we don't recognize that, we are stuck in the middle of this package of beliefs about who we are. And the only escape that we can imagine is just to fix myself, improve myself, get rid of my bad habits, become worthy, all those kinds of things. Noble, yes, but not very effective. The alternative is really to recognize what we truly are and then see the conditioning as conditioning. Yes, this body-mind was conditioned. Yes, it tends to behave like this. Yes, it tends to believe these things. But when we really see the conditioned nature of it, we see that it's not really who we are. It's not really, we can't take it quite so seriously. Easier to laugh at our foibles. And it's not dismissing it, it's actually allowing ourselves to remain present with it so that we can see it more clearly. If we see it clearly, it loses its grip. It retains its grip to the extent that we haven't yet examined it. So that's really the escape route from this prison where we believe that we are the sum total, the sum package of what we believe about ourselves. We can see that, there may be some relative truth to that. Okay. I mean, it's relatively true that If you work hard, you'll get ahead. Right? Not always true. Not true for everybody. A lot of people work really hard and aren't successful. But it may be relatively true. But what we're talking about here is coming to the point of finding something that is ultimately true. And what's ultimately true is not a concept. It's not an idea. It's not a belief. It can't be. If we're talking about the essence of our existence, the essence of reality, it's not going to be able to be reduced to a concept. Any concept. But it can be discovered and it can be lived. We'll never be able to explain it, but we can become familiar with it. And we can live as that, from that spaciousness. That we can do. And yes, the conditioning will still be there. And yes, thoughts will still arise. But so what? I mean, if we don't take them to be what we are, they just don't have any sticking power. They're still there, they'll still arise, but, they just lose their teeth. We see them for what they are. We lose our fascination with them. That's what removes the plug that energizes them, our fascination with our personal drama.